All right, we're live. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to everyone who is new to Ninja RMM's MSP live chats. Tom, good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and for those who are just tuning in and you haven't seen the last one, I'm Jonathan Crowe. I'm Director of Content and Community here at Ninja RMM. Great to see everybody coming in and making comments already. For those who are new to the Crowdcast platform, it's a lot like Zoom, right? So there's a chat section that people are already engaging in, which is awesome to see. And definitely feel free to use that. Jump in, because this session, we try to make it really clear with the emails that went out to everybody and the invites. We really want the session to be all about you all connecting with each other. This is something that we started off this series about 4 months ago. We had our very first MSP live chat, and we started off this whole thing as a chance right when COVID was really getting into full swing. Things were getting pretty hairy. We started as a chance for the Ninja RMN partners, but also the greater MSP community to come together and say, like, hey, all, what's going on? How's everybody dealing with this stuff in a general sense, but also specific issues too? And I see we have Ask a Question here. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see this is a great place for you to put your questions. You can use the chat for commenting on things and connecting with one another. But if you have a question that you want to address, put it into the Ask a Question down at the bottom. And I see that Matt's already done that. And it's a great question that we're definitely going to get to. Before I ramble on too much further, Tom, why don't you introduce yourself too?
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. Really looking forward to this one. As Jonathan said, we kind of had an initial one of these when COVID kind of started taking form and talking about where people are. And we're kind of revisiting that today. And I'm happy to be here. I am Ninja's Channel Chief Advisor, and I'm a former MSP owner. I owned an MSP for 15 years and exited. And now I enjoy working on the vendor side and with Jonathan, creating content and answering your all questions and helping you guys grow your business.
And it's great seeing in the comments everyone replying where they're signing in from. It's international. We got Anthony from Mexico. We got people from DC, Florida, Arizona, Canada, New York, all over the place, which is really key for this kind of discussion, because I think we can all agree from the very start of this, it's like people have been living in some different worlds depending on where you are, right? It's going to be great to hear from some of the people that we talked with at the very first chat. We know Dan Comas. Thank you for coming on again. We're going to bring you on in a little bit to get an update from you. So Dan's in New York. So his experience early on in March and April was different from what some people in the rest of the country were seeing. And now it looks like we got some people from Florida, from Arizona, some other places where we're seeing recent spikes. And so very curious to hear from people about what's going on in your area. How are things being impacted? How's your business being impacted? Anything from how are you conducting sales calls now? Are things locked down? Are you open? Are you working from home with your own techs, or is everyone back in the office? These are all things that we want to connect about. So before we go any further, those of you who have attended previous MSP live chats will be familiar with this format. We've got an agenda doc that I'm going to share with you guys, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen for a second too. Oh, and Sammy already did it. Thanks, Sammy. Sammy is also our marketing coordinator. She's in the back end here. She's commenting as Ninja RMM in the chat too. So thank you, Sammy, for doing that. But if you go to that agenda doc, I'm going to bring it up now too. This will give you kind of a lay of the land, and you can cheat and sneak ahead too. These have some of our questions that we're going to be asking, and links to some other stats and resources too that we want to talk about. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, and as I said, feel free to follow around. We've done our intros. We've talked about how to participate. If you have any questions, or if you have any issues, audio, video, whatever, let us know in the chat. We'll try to help you solve those. A refresh will almost always do the trick. First thing, I just wanted to ask everybody, and feel free to chime in the chat, like, how's everybody doing? It's such a weird thing thinking back to March when we first had our live chat series. It feels like a year ago. Things have obviously changed a lot since then. I have a little image here. This is the thing that people do on the Twitters, right? The how my experience has changed in the last few years, and in the last year, this felt like multiple years. But if we go back here to these charts here, Tom, I don't know if you remember this, but we polled everybody, and we were kind of getting a sense of March 26th. How bad was it? And we got a sense from 2/3 of the people on our live chat that, you know what, things are actually fairly okay. And so I'm curious here now, we've got some polls that are going to be asking this question in a slightly different way. But how are things going? Has recovery actually happened? Was it really bad and there's a painful adjustment? Or did things never really get that bad? I mean, we know from our other chats that a lot of MSPs, March and April, it was a crazy busy and hectic time, but it was also a good time. A lot of business was coming in, a lot of projects. Curious to hear how things have kind of shifted since then. Tom, I know you've been talking with some specific partners too.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. It's very curious to me because it seemed like, as you said, there was a big hurry up time, and then I want to see kind of what happened after that when you got everyone set up for remote work. What did you see as an after effect of that? How has your business been impacted? Are there positives out of this? That's always good. Are there things that you need help with that you want to maybe throw in front of other people and say, hey, I've got this situation?
Yeah, and I mean, on a stepping back, starting off in a very general sense, I mean, great to see we asked the team morale question. We have over half of the people on who have responded to the poll. And if you haven't responded, you can go down to the bottom of your screen here, and there's a polls option. You can go in there and check that out. A lot of people are actually, morale's doing great. And so I'm curious for those people who are responding in a positive way, any issues in terms of your technicians, anything that you've been doing, like has anyone done something out of the way or changed the way they're operating? Like, have you done anything extra to make sure that team morale is going well? Are you having, more like pizza on Friday for those who are in the office? Or are you staying connected for those who are working from home? Are you making additional efforts? If anyone has anything cool like that they've done, it'd be interesting to share in the chat, and maybe we could even have you on. But in addition to that, I'm going to open up some other polls, including, what's the biggest challenge right now? Are you losing clients and seats? Are people downgrading or canceling altogether? Is it managing work from home clients like we saw Matt with his question, dealing with that thorny subject? Is it the team working from home and dealing with keeping people connected, or just the logistics there? And what about getting new clients too? This is something that we're going to dive in deeper to, especially when we talk to some of a couple of MSPs that we've let know that we're going to invite them on screen a little bit later.
Jonathan, we've got an interesting comment here from Alex Farling. We got the opportunity to hire someone great who was laid off by an equity cap-owned MSP. We were booked for the next 90 days in project work, paid project work above and beyond MSP business. While a few customers are struggling, most are PPP rich. So I think that's a really good observation. I hadn't really thought of it that way, that maybe there's companies out there that have these PPP funds and are still operating, so they're able to take on some projects they otherwise wouldn't or have been putting off. It's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hiring too. I mean, Alex being opportunistic and jumping on. I think we've seen there's a few different boards like that, and I can go looking for them here in a second. But I know that there is some job posting boards where there's initial layoffs that were happening, where a lot of good people were getting let go despite the PPP program. Way to go, Alex, for jumping on and snagging some good talent. Sandra, here's a comment. Primarily holding steady, seeing a decline in project work as all staff's working from home, and we go on site to client sites as needed with masks, etc. So this is another thing I wanted to talk about. And I mean, obviously there's so many topics. You guys can help kind of direct me, and Tom, maybe you can rein me in too. But let's hone in on that for a second. Let's start with the working from home. I've launched another poll here. All polls all the time. So is your company working from home? I'm talking about your own technicians, not necessarily your clients. And things are kind of split here. I'm sure this probably depends a lot on where you're located and what regulations are. what your own technicians feel comfortable with. But it looks like, yeah, again, things are kind of split. But when it comes to doing on-sites, this is a big question, Tom. You and I were talking about this in the lead up to the chat today. What are people doing with on-site work? I mean, I've heard from some MSPs that they have a whole system down. They've got masks. They're bringing cleaning equipment. They do things only on off peak hours, off office hours. And so I'm just kind of curious in the chat too if if everyone's taking that kind of precautions, or if it's just kind of lifted up and you're almost back to normal. So launching a poll for that too. I mean, Kristen, we see you're out and about doing face-to-face meetings and support. So that's interesting to hear. And Kristen, I think you mentioned where you're located. You're in Florida. Yeah. So Kristen, I mean, how's it going with the face-to-face meetings? Is that, when you say that, is that something that you're booking ahead of time? Have you had any hesitations there? Is it something that's just kind of taken people say yes, no problem? Be kind of interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I don't know if you can see, but I want to see if David Lerner has joined us. You see,
David has, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to see if David can maybe, I know David, and see if he could come on. And David is operating in Long Island and does business also in New York City. And we're going to have David come on and maybe share some of his experiences with us about what's going on in that region, as it's interesting, I'm sure, to all of us. New York has handled this thing differently than a lot of other places, and it looks like they're having a successful reopening. So maybe Sammy or Jonathan, we can bring David on.
Here he is.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Oh, great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess the big question is, what have you seen with this reopening? How is it working out for you and your business, and what are you perceiving going on in New York?
Yeah, so we're an MSP. It's probably helpful to have a little bit of background there. We're an MSP, but we're also a full service integration shop. We do quite a bit of design build of physical space with a concentration in retail, office, warehouse operations. So I would say we're seeing an interesting mix of impact. On the managed services side, we were in a frenzy back in March. So we were offboarding users. We were coordinating the exodus of office workers into work from home environments, organizing logistics around take back of company equipment from laid off and furloughed employees. So fair to say things looked pretty grim back in March and early April here in New York. I remember thinking one week, wow, we'll have collectively offboarded close to 100 end users for our customers this week, which was more than I think we've ever offboarded me personally in my entire career. So that was the bad news. The good thing is that our managed service activity picked back up pretty quickly after that. I think not all, but a lot of what we saw in the staff reductions and the tightening of pocketbooks were customer knee-jerk reactions to uncertainty, right? And so once people started to see this is bad, but it's not killing our business, and I mean, unfortunately, for the businesses that were not killed, customers slowly fell in line into adopting best practices around remote workforces. So we started seeing an uptick in the embrace of cloud platforms and RMM with Ninja and MDM and single sign-on and endpoint protection platforms. And a lot of those projects have carried us through to today. And we're still busy with implementations, training, tweaking. So that's been good. As far as our integration work goes, a lot of those projects fell off a cliff in March when project sites started to get shut down. And so what we're starting to see now is the weaker and more speculative projects are just falling off to the side. But the strong customers projects are coming back with a vengeance. And just as I was getting accustomed to eating lunch at a normal time every day, the craziness has returned. So I'm very much feeling us getting back towards a normal workload pretty quickly.
Hey, David, I have a question for you. And actually, this is Matt's question. I'm going to pose it to you. Have you guys taken on responsibilities for your clients' work from home employees at all in terms of their networks?
Yeah, I saw that question. It's an interesting one. So a lot of our customers are very technical, and so those customers can kind of fend for themselves when it comes to their work from home environments. For those who are not and they're willing, we're very happy to go in there and see what we can virtually, right, and see what we can do. A lot of it comes down to poor Wi-Fi signal, right? A lot of these people are looks like you're operating on a porch or something, right? And so helping them understand what their options are and trying to guide them towards, hey, maybe you can just go and get. You might not want to run wires throughout your whole house, but you can look at Eero or Google Mesh or something, and that might help you get up and running. And we've done quite a bit of that, just kind of guiding people towards the right direction, either at a high level with the company or specifically with end users. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Great. And David, I have one more question for you. Like, how has it been going with kind of, as much as you're willing to share, kind of in your company with technicians, people going on site, and then, just comfortability as things open up in the New York area?
Yeah. So we were always considered an essential service in New York. So we never padlocked our office door. And so in March, when New York started to get hit really badly, we came to a point where we said to our techs and our entire team, really, you can get into the office if you really need to, but otherwise, please work from home. And so here I am. I'm in the office right now, and I'm sitting in this post-apocalyptic empty office. It's like an I Am Legend situation. But one of the things that we did do was we let our team take home whatever technology they needed to be more comfortable and efficient at home. So, we've got these 43-inch monitors that we're all using. Most of our team took those home. A lot of people took home their IP phones. We've even had people take home their chairs because they were otherwise working off of a couch. And so we've really tried to make people as comfortable as possible and be as flexible as possible, just to minimize the impact of working from home. Every once in a while, there are signs of life here in the office. People will come in if they need to work on something specific, or if they need to collaborate with something or someone. And we have also had techs in the field. We have a number of customers who also operate in essential service categories, and we've supported them through the pandemic. So on that front, it's been really a matter of making sure our field techs do have the correct protective equipment to go out to customer sites. And to me, that's really been a big part of the opportunity here, right? Is just making sure where the challenge is obvious, right? The challenge is losing business and carrying customers who are struggling, but it's also the opportunity here. And while it's really tough to say what's going to come next and easy to assume the worst, that same challenge really is our opportunity, and displaying our strength despite the climate, and making customers comfortable and feel like we're making the investment in them has been really worthwhile.
Right.
Yeah, David, just a question about, and obviously feel free to share just as much as you feel comfortable, but in terms of your business, the financials, the MRR, are you back at the same level as pre-COVID, or your estimations? Are you up, down?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm in a great position to make intelligent forecasts for 2020 as a whole. We're 60% into the year. And what I can say with a pretty high level of confidence is that as an organization and even as an industry at a high level, I think that the pandemic has given us, again, back to the word opportunity, a really strong opportunity to prove our value to the business world. And the fact that we're going to come out of this really strong, I think stronger than before. So I feel good about us personally. I feel good about our MRR. And I think we'll be in a good place, close to the same, if not better than where we were at the end of the day. A lot of it's going to come down to what does the next 5 months bring for us, but I feel good about it.
It's great to hear you say that, and it's something that I've heard kind of mimicked too. And I bring it up in part because I see these headlines a lot. I think we're looking at the screen here. Here's from Forrester. The average MSP will see revenue dropping 70%. And then we've got Service Leadership. They came out back, I think maybe a month ago or a couple months ago, and said their estimates were 30%. And it's not exactly in line. I know everyone's situation is very different. Depends on your vertical, depends on your geography, all that stuff, your maturity level, all those things. But in a sense, I just wanted to I think I launched this as a poll too. Like, do people think that this is right? Because anecdotally, from what, just talking with people, I think we hear a more positive picture than this on the whole.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the news, and particularly with some of the international news, for whatever reason, I get a lot of UK and India news in my feed around MSPs, and a lot of it looks like doomsday. And I think that's somewhat a function of media energizing the negative aspects of things. But from what we've seen, it's not been good, right? But if we're looking for a silver lining, it's not hard to find. And it's very clear that, again, as an industry, we come out relative to many or most other industries, we come out of this really strong, right? It just underscores the need for managed services. And all of our customers, even the ones who are weak right now, are seeing how important we are. We are not one of the throwaway vendors. We need to be true partners here, and that's, again, back to the opportunity where we can thrive.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say as an industry. This is something else I wanted to share with everybody, and there's a link to this in the agenda doc. But this is stats from census.gov. I think they've been doing this on weekly. I'm not sure, honestly, if this is from a survey or what. But they've been asking people basically severity of impact that COVID has had on the business. And then also, what's the outlook? How long do you think it's going to take before things get back to normal? And you can slice and dice the data by state, which is kind of interesting. But here's by sector. And so again, like, I'm sure this is a vast generalization, but we can see that basically what this amounts to is these are the verticals over here that they were hit hard, and they don't see things improving for quite a while, 6 months minimum. And down here, we have the industries where things are like light impact, quick recovery time, utilities being a big one. I'm kind of interested in construction. I know, is anyone on the line, if you want to mention in chat? I know we have a lot of partners who deal a lot with construction. It's come up in previous chats. I'm curious whether this rings true to you guys. But this is something where it kind of goes back into something that's come up during previous conversations of vertical specialization, which before all this, there's a lot of people saying, yes, you need to specialize in a vertical. And maybe that's still good advice in terms of you want to differentiate yourself somehow. But I mean, man, this really, I think, has made a lot of people think, oh, I got to diversify, or maybe that's not the best approach, especially the people who have had the misfortune of specializing in the wrong industry. I know, Tom, you had some thoughts about that previously. I mean, did you specialize in a vertical with your MSP, Tom?
Yeah, well, I had about 7 verticals that I operated in, with legal being probably 40% of my clients at any one time. So that was my strongest vertical. And then, dabbled here in medical and construction and, other types of consulting firms as well. And then I was in the DC area, so a lot of government contractors. That was probably my second biggest vertical. But that is one thing we were talking about offline, Jonathan, was that we looking at the opportunity MSPs have for perhaps, if you were strong in the restaurant vertical or retail, that might not be as good for you right now. And trying to parlay some of those skills into other verticals and see what you can make of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if we look at the chat here, people's experiences, it's just interesting. Again, we've got a lot of different types of stories here. Ryan, I mean, it'd be great to have you on at some point because you're mentioning that you've been adding lots of customers and new business has been good. And then we have other people saying, man, sales is tough right now. It's competitive. So I can imagine if you're in that position and you're trying to get into a new vertical, that could be challenging. But one person, David, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go get back to it, and hopefully you can have lunch at hopefully you've either already had lunch today or you're gonna have it soon.
Soon, hopefully.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thanks again, David.
Thanks.
And I wanted to bring on Dan, if you're up for it, Dan. Dan's also a New York area based MSP, and Dan's been with us since the beginning, talking about his experience. So I just kind of want to get an update. And he also had some interesting comments about what his technicians are doing on on-sites. So I'm going to send you the invite, Dan. And while we're doing that, I mean, yeah, Ryan, you're saying you diversified before 2008 to try to kind of mitigate your risk there for losing any one client, which is interesting. All right, so Dan, I've sent you the invite. Come on down whenever you're ready. And here we go, Alex. I'm looking at my dry clean customers who services all hotels and restaurants. If those clients fail, he will eventually fail, and then he can't pay me. That didn't happen on April 1st, might not happen until 2021, but he's in a bad place. I mean, that's interesting too. Maybe that goes back to too, like the one thing we wanted to kind of get a sense from everybody is that I think the PPP program really saved a lot of bacon, right? And that combined with some of the other loans and benefit programs that are going out there, really kind of keeping things afloat. And now I'm curious whether that's maybe delayed things, to Alex's point. Is it keeping them alive up to a point and they're going to see that trouble down the road? Has anyone seen clients who are just now starting to, has there been kind of a delay with anything where there's clients who kind of have been limping along who are just now starting to feel trouble? Like any specific verticals or types of customers you're seeing in that regard? That'd be interesting. But Dan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate you doing these things. Doing a great job.
Oh, love to hear that. And yeah, I mean, we checked in with you. You were back, I think, on the very first chat, describing some of your experience. We heard from David just now about how things were going in the New York area. Sounds like your experience is maybe a little bit different, but maybe start off with the on-sites. Like, how has that kind of evolved from you? Are there any changes that you've made? I guess what's happening right now? And then also, are there any changes that have happened that you've been kind of forced to make that have uncovered like more efficient way to do things? Like, are there any changes that you won't roll back that may be permanent ones that are kind of like happy discoveries to find or not?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that point is really about documentation, and we'll get back to it. As far as the on-sites go, David went through a lot of it. We're pretty much in the same neighborhood as far as New York is concerned. So he hit the nail on the head across the board on a lot of things. For us, middle of March, we sent everybody to work from home and said, unless it's an absolute emergency, we're not doing any on-site services. I reached out to every, primary point of contact with our clients directly, and told them what was going on. Obviously got no resistance to it. Everybody was pretty much on the same page. The goal is to make sure that everybody was safe and kept as far out of harm's way as possible. Thankfully, we didn't have any emergencies for months. I think we went 6 to 8 weeks before we had to come back for an on-site visit. And when we did, we talked with the CEO of the company and said, hey, how do you want us to proceed? We're obviously going to put safety first for our team. What's important to you? So it was, let's try and do it outside of traditional business hours, right? Because they're rotating their staff. They've had somebody, they had somebody sick at their location. So they're, just safety first,
right.
across the board. So it was mask, gloves, hand sanitizer, 3 different places. So you can lose 2 and you still have your 3rd. Clean the workspace before we touch anything, right? Anything that we're going to work on, spray it down, clean it, paper towels, cleaning supplies, the whole deal. Do what we need to do and then clean it all again, make sure that this is the most sanitized location you've ever seen, pretend your mom's coming over for dinner. You got to clean the table nice, So yeah. And then it was a couple of weeks of off hours work. And as phase 3 started here, we began to do, typical business hour work. Obviously, we're still staying away, keeping the social distance on site, and only doing required visits. We're still not doing anything that isn't necessary for us to be there, out of just overabundance of caution. And we haven't gotten any resistance, and it's gone well. Our as far as our techs going out to do the work, right. Everybody feels really good about it. We've been, everybody's been in Long Island, just east of Manhattan for, throughout this whole thing. Everybody's family has either, gone to and from work. Everybody has people who have, been essential workers or healthcare workers. So everyone has been close to somebody who's been there since day one doing it, right. Doing everything they have to do for everybody. So it wasn't as challenging or maybe, scary for some people to get back to a place where, okay, we're going to go out and we're just going to follow, we're going to take precautions. We're going to be safe. And, we'll make sure we do the right thing. If there's any fear or any, questionable situations, immediately back out, and in that we've gotten a ton of project work done in the past couple of months, like staggering. I didn't see that coming at all. And that's partly due to our team, being committed to go out and get it, and partly due to some businesses really taking the initiative to reinvest in their infrastructure and their futures right now, which is just so incredible to see.
Talk about convincing. You don't have to do much convincing now, right? Talk about a exhibit A, in terms of you making the push for those types of projects. I'm just kind of curious, any particular types of work or projects that's been coming up a lot?
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
But probably the most important thing for any business and the least attractive thing for anybody to spend money on, and especially in the small business space, network overhauls, complete, gutting of old infrastructure after people kind of see how it holds up with work from home and see some of the challenges that weren't necessarily in front of them or directly in front of them, previously. And, to the point of MSP value being higher, this is, another example of the value of the infrastructure for what we're doing and the recommendations that we make. We don't just say these things to hear ourselves talk or to get higher numbers on those projects and those monthly services. There's a reason for all of it. And this was a really strong opportunity for them to recognize it and see it. And we've Wi-Fi has been a big deal for a lot of our spaces. Any place that has guests or, we do some restaurants and public venues, any place, especially because outdoor seating with some of the restaurant locations was the thing. We did not have enough time in the day to get this stuff done. And the companies were all for it and didn't give, they recognize the value of it for their business as they're going to move forward and maintain and fight through this year and be bigger next year and the year after that. And they were 100% down to get after it and get it done.
Nice. You say a lot of new project work. Definitely sounds like you guys are busy. What about new clients? Have you brought in any new business during all this?
We have not. We actually, prior to COVID, we were bringing in a service manager to help with some of the level 3 and the dispatch and some of the higher level technical work so that I could focus a lot more on that, because I still was at the point where I was getting pulled back into tech work, the higher level tech work from time to time.
Yep. Tom had on that too.
Yeah. We literally had somebody hired. They were moving to New York to come work with us. And I talked to them a week before. I said, we shouldn't do this. You know, we don't know what's going on, for everybody's safety, and realistically, financially, we didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if we were going to take on that person. Then all of a sudden if I can't meet the sales goals that I've had for 2020, which would have justified that hire, that's kind of upending the company for no good reason. So I decided against that. So to answer your question of are we, how busy are we, or have we had new sales? Excuse me. We really haven't, because we've been so busy and kind of bursting at the seams with technical work. But we did find an efficiency opportunity, if I may.
Absolutely.
We signed on with a service desk company to try and help us relieve the pressure on that level 1, level 2, level 0, level 1 tickets that we're in the process of onboarding with. And our goal to reinvest in TechRunner in our company is, to help our current staff grow and give them more time to learn, give them opportunities to do higher level work, and ultimately get me back to that sales and marketing role and really working on the business the way we need to.
So that's great. I mean, another big change that. Do you think that was something that you would have considered kind of prior to all this, or did this really kind of instigate things?
It was something we had considered it. I had been talking with the owner of the company we went with for over a year, just to kind of understand and feel it, because I'd initially kind of been against the idea of it in general. But it took me a long time to warm up to it. And once I started to see it in practice with other MSPs and some friends who use them, it made a lot more sense. And once I stared in the face the workload that we were under and the really nonstop requests about all the work from home people, all that little stuff, all those little time wasters, right. It seemed like this is the opportunity to eliminate that, keep our clients happy. And also by introducing a small change in how we're going to operate, all of our customers should recognize that we are taking this opportunity to pivot ourselves so that we can still deliver that quality of service that we want to for them and allow us to grow. And any good client should recognize when we're trying to do something good for our own business. And to me, that should be an asset. They should see that and go, this is a company we absolutely want to work with. And maybe there's some, there is something we can learn from TechRunner in addition to, just them providing services for us. Absolutely.
Kind of showing the walk, not just doing the talk too. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you bringing back and being around for all these things. It's good to hear that you guys are safe and you're doing well, and that you got a lot of work coming in. That's great. So I'm gonna let you go back to the chat for now, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Dan. And let's see if a couple other people I'd love to bring on if you're up for it. So a couple areas here. First of all, in the chat, if there's anyone else that's had something that through this, you've made some discoveries about new efficiencies, new changes in the way you do things that you're actually going to keep, even when things are back to normal, whatever that means. That'd be interesting. But Alex, I mean, if you're up for it, we'd love to get you on here because your comment here is a good one, an important one. We spend our lives looking to mitigate risk. Now's the time to be evaluating our risk and making sure that our at-risk clients can't take us down with them. So I'm interested in get into that a little bit more because you're kind of referencing the longer term thinking, and I want to hear more about kind of what you mean by that.
Yeah, Jonathan, Alex and I have been going back and forth in here in the chat on that, and that's kind of what I worry about too. I look at these situations as I'm going to have clients that have dependencies on particular industries verticals, and if those verticals start to fail, that even though I'm not like say directly tied to restaurants as he's describing use dry cleaners a lot or something like that, or hotels do. And so eventually my dry cleaner, as he describes, is going to go out of business, and that hurts me. So those things take a while to happen. And I liked what Alex said in here. You can talk about this, about, making sure you're reducing your own risk so clients can't take you down.
Yeah, and I've invited Alex. If this don't feel the pressure.
Well, we know Alex already. He's from Life Cycle Insights.
I know. Yeah. You should come on, Alex. Just come on the line. But while we're waiting, I also wanted to ask. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
Yeah. Good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm working in the office and doing all the stuff we normally do. So trying to pretend like it's a normal day.
Thanks for beefing up the chat. It's a pretty good little conversation we're having going there, and appreciate the insights you're bringing.
Well, we had a group. There's a Facebook group called Everything MSP, and Dan Tomaszewski runs that. It's a great group. And there was a great conversation in there one day that really got us thinking along those lines. And the conversation was, do you know which customers put you at risk of going out of business? If you lost 2 or 3 customers, or if one vertical got hit really, really hard and really, really heavy, have you at least evaluated from a business perspective? Like, if I lost my biggest 3 clients, would I have to let somebody go? Would I have to close the office and work from home? Like, what remediations can I do on the P&L that keep us open in the event that we lose that one big client or several clients in a vertical or something like that? And so as a group, they hashed it out and came up with some interesting concepts,
Well, yeah, I mean, we'd love obviously to hear what some of those were, because I guess beyond that exercise of just making sure that you're prepared, that you kind of have your own disaster recovery plan in a way. Are there any other suggestions you guys came up with in terms of, like, is the answer just making sure that you're acquiring new clients that are helping, dilute that risk, or what's the answer?
Some of it was that. Some of it was just going through and literally doing an assessment of your clients and saying, hey, who's in an industry that's going to get hit? What percentage of your revenue are they? And if you lost them, what does that do to your profit margin? I mean, if you're operating at a healthy 15-20% profit margin and you lose, a few grand a month in MRR, you're probably still profitable. If you're operating at dead even right now, or going into COVID and you lost that big client, it puts a dent in your P&L. So a lot of it was just self-evaluation of how good and how bad was my MSP when we started this, and then what can we cut if we came into this fat with fancy tools and bells and whistles we didn't need. Can we cut those? We saw it from all the upstream vendors. We saw ConnectWise lay off people. We saw Datto and those folks make some reductions, and there was some argument as to whether or not those were COVID related or whether they were just equity capital investment reactions. But either way, they can duck and hide behind COVID and call it that, regardless of what it is. But all the big folks, the big equity folks, are saying, hey, our idea of this, our idea how to handle this is hoard cash and have a plan. So that was our plan going into it, was learn from people smarter than us, hoard cash, and have a plan.
And what about any changes that you guys have made in addition to that hoarding cash that you think you're going to stick to? Let's say, like, vaccine comes out tomorrow, everything's back to normal. Is there anything that you've started doing differently now that you're going to stick with?
I wouldn't say there's anything we started doing now that we're going to stick with, other than work from home. I mean, I was always a little bit timid with work from home. I was afraid I wouldn't get those same results out of my team. A lot of them have children. There's a lot of distractions at home, right? We all have more toys at home than we have in the office. And it's just easy to get distracted. What I've found is that my team has been phenomenal about getting their work done. The customer feedback is still super positive. We're getting the same result. So our game plan from this really is to, our office, we've been ready to relocate our office for a couple of years. We're probably going to downsize the office and leave the opportunity to work from home at least a few days a week forever. It's proven to me as a business owner that I don't need to be quite as control freakish about it, and you can let people do their thing, and as long as you have accountability measures in place, and they'll get their work done.
I mean, yeah, we're seeing that Ninja has always been a pretty heavily distributed company, and headquarters is in San Francisco. People have not been back there. A lot of working from home now, and so we're adapting to all this stuff too. I think we were probably, maybe like a lot of people on the call, in a better place than some other businesses in terms of adapting. But yeah, I mean, it's there's no plans to rush back for us.
Yeah, same here. And we put a 60-inch TV on the wall in the tech bullpen. We hung put a conferencing system up on it, and all the textile into a Zoom room, and we can all have a conversation just like we have, day to day. And we meet there several times a day just to hash through anything that goes on. So it's kind of a window into the office for the folks who aren't here.
Nice. Anything else like that you guys have done to kind of check in, make sure, everyone's kind of staying connected, doing okay?
We had started the Rockefeller habits or traction type stuff with daily huddles and all that more than once in our business, and stumbled as we'd gone through it, and not really kept it on track. The new hire that we were able to get from a much larger MSP had a lot of experience, and she's really had an impact on the traction mentality in our business. So we've got our daily huddle on track. It seems like a stupid, simple thing, but we put a status in ConnectWise for tickets that an engineer needs to review in that huddle. And they literally just change the status of a ticket. And then when we go sit in that daily huddle, we pull up a board and rip through all the tickets. And it's made that daily huddle super productive. People come more prepared. It's a shorter conversation. We know what we've got to cover, and there's much less hemming and hawing in between of people trying to think about what they wanted to share in that 15 minutes. So that was a little productivity hack that we came up with.
Nice. And
sounds simple, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, and well, you mentioned the Facebook group, and I mean, I think we're already seeing. I mean, I love this conversation. I love you coming on, and others, everybody in the chat. I think people get something out of this, and obviously, this isn't the only venue to be able to connect with more people. So you mentioned the Facebook group, Everything MSP. I think I've got the right link. I'm going to share this. You can let me know if I'm wrong here. Is this a link to the site?
Let's see. Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, great. So then
there is a Facebook group with the same name. Yeah. Yep. And there's quite a few Facebook groups out there that have a bunch of MSP owners in it, but this group got together and just does at first they were doing it every day, hash out for 45 minutes at noon, like, what are your problems? And now they're down to, I think they're meeting 2 days a week, and it's just MSP best practices and, what can you do to improve your business or clean things up a little bit. There's some vendors that show up. So we get some good insight from vendors. Dan does a lot to get guest speakers from time to time and, really deliver some quality content. So what we're finding is we're doing less travel. We have a little more time on our hands, and we can put some time into these kind of things.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's something that we're interested in too, hearing about what are the next things, how can we evolve? In fact, literally this series, should we take this in a way where, when we started the live chats out, I think initially we were doing it weekly, and then we kind of backed off that cadence a little bit. Obviously, the other factor is there's so many ways, virtual events and virtual things like this happening right now. There's just a lot. And so I think I'm curious to hear people are having fatigue, or whether you guys are still getting value out of things like this. I'll send out a survey to everybody after this, just to, if you don't mind, a couple of minutes, and get some thoughts about how often do you want to be doing stuff like this? What else can we do differently? Do you want to have more topics? All that good stuff. Because we want to make sure that we're just being here for you guys and giving you stuff that's helpful. But Alex, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, sir.
Take care.
You too. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to scroll through here and see Ryan. Ryan, you were mentioning that a couple of things with, you had diversified in advance, but also you're adding some new clients. I'm going to the polls here and see that the biggest challenge for folks right now, getting new clients, is a big one. That's probably not confined to these COVID times. That's always an ongoing challenge for folks. But if you're up for it, we'd love to have you on, and maybe you could share some of your experience. I know you mentioned referrals were a big driver for you. And then also, I just want to call out Kristen. You mentioned that you're doing some on-sites very differently, and now you're thinking that you may adjust that. But I would just call out. I mean, maybe, but also I think as we've seen here, people's experiences are very different depending on where they're located. So I mean, if you have clients or prospects who are comfortable with not that same level of the mom cleaning and things like that, I don't know that you necessarily need to instill it. Kind of, you know best probably your own area. But yeah, Rob, I'm going to go ahead and I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm going to send the invite for you. Feel free to accept it. If you're not comfortable with it, that's okay too. I see we got Ray on the line, and we've had Ray on before. But Ray, you're in Miami, right? Another Floridian. Be kind of cool to have you on and just hear from you, kind of what your procedure is, if that's okay.
Yeah, I always like to hear from Ray.
Yeah. Yeah, and what? Ray. There we go. I love the peer pressure. Boom. Invite sent, mister. And then let's see, Ryan. Oh, cool. Ryan's up for it too. So I've sent both of you guys invites to come on. We've got about 8 minutes left until 2. We're happy to go over if people are having a good discussion, obviously. There he is.
Yeah, and Jonathan, one thing I wanted to throw out there is, we talked to David earlier, and we kind of got this perspective on New York. And, of course, we've seen how New York got hit first and kind of coming back. And kind of compare and contrast that. I'd be interested to hear now from Ray, kind of where things are going in Florida. Do you think they're going to go backwards from where you are, or are we still kind of in the middle?
We're doing this thing where we keep, can you guys hear me okay? Sorry.
A little low on the volume.
How about now?
That's better.
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, Miami's been doing this thing where we're playing hopscotch here. We were closed and then we reopened and then we just all closed again. So we keep bouncing back and forth. I think the general consensus is we reopened too early. In our own office, unfortunately, we had none of our staff were affected, thank God. But very close to them, somebody got confirmed positive. So out of caution, we reclosed the office within 3 weeks of reopening. Because we had already been adept at working from home, it's not a big deal, and everybody got tested immediately and everybody was fine. We're very fortunate, but I think we're treading with caution right now. And most of South Florida is doing the same.
Well, what about glad to hear that no one in your direct office was impacted like that or was came up positive with it. Curious to hear from you. I mean, the big question being new clients. I'm curious how this is impacted. We're talking about going on sites for current clients. A lot of people, it's baked into their sales process that you go on site to do assessments, all that kind of thing. Any adjustments there, or anything that you guys are doing differently that's either bringing on new clients or kind of adjusting the way that you're doing that?
I mean, I think the MSPs that are succeeding right now are the ones that have become creative, right? The ones that have figured out. We're very fortunate because we're always 99% remote, and that's not a fake number. That's a real bright gauge 99% remote service delivery, including new customers. On the VoIP side, we get very fortunate because new customers, they're usually handled by channel partners, but we ship stuff out. We work on ways to not have to go on site. With the existing MSP customers, because we don't take new MSP customers, excuse me. With the existing MSP customers, we've gotten creative as well when it does require something on site, either going after hours or shipping pre-configured hardware in advance with very detailed instructions for the client to help us out with. And clients have been very open to that. On the new client on the VoIP side, we've always done video meetings. That's just It's become more norm with the current climate, but we've always done it that way. Maybe Ryan wants to say something on the new client acquisition side, since maybe he has a little more experience on new MSP clients more than I do.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. So Ryan, where are you located?
Up in Ferndale, Washington, so up the Canadian border in Washington.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how are things, you've heard people from New York, you just heard from Ray in Florida. How are things in your area? Kind of different, similar?
We were really locked down because we were next to the epicenter in Seattle. So we were pretty early on in getting locked down. We've since laxed a little bit. We're in phase 2, but we've had a recent resurge. So we may be going back to phase 1. We'll see.
Yeah, like the hopscotching, like Ray's machine too.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of the new business, I mean, you said that you've been actually adding some clients during all this, which congratulations for that. And you mentioned referrals, but anything else you want to share on that end?
No, mostly it started 2 years ago when we changed our model from a per device model to a per user model. It really shifted that for COVID. We don't have to have hard conversations about, what devices do we not cover anymore if there's a customer that's struggling. If they reduce staff, they reduce our contract, our agreement. It just takes the argument out of it. We've stayed very, very stable, including net new ads with customers. We had a little dip, but it quickly came back once people got situated at home, and we handled that adjustment just fine. But when we switched to that model, that really changed that conversation. It also allowed us that during this time is we doubled down on projects. We had stuff in the hopper that was just waiting to get in the queue to go, and we just started going. We took it as an opportunity to start doing network maintenance, network upgrades that were already scheduled. That isn't a new acquisition for a customer, an existing customer. It's just us doing our work. So that kept us really, really busy. And then since we are an essential service, just like everyone else here is, and we do a lot of essential services, a lot of essential service customers, those customers started talking to other customers who were struggling to get their IT off the ground. And then they started streaming in referrals.
That's great. So it sounds like you had maybe a similar experience to Dan, really taking the opportunity to be proactive and push the project work. And then your great work has paid off in the terms of referrals. Are you guys doing anything to kind of actively encourage those referrals, or is it completely like?
No, it's completely natural. It's just a completely natural process. We find it's more genuine and converts to an actual net new customer more accurate than marketing. Mostly we're just active in the business community as a whole for name recognition, but net new customers come through referral.
Now, Ryan, I saw in the in your comments here, you're talking about MSPs going out of business, and we already have been seeing MSPs kind of atrophying, a little bit of stronger MSPs soaking up the weaker ones, and private equity entering. What do you see your comment here, and how do you see that reflecting on that? Is that an increase, and how is that possibly benefiting what you're doing?
The one thing that we've seen, if you weren't doing it very well before COVID, you're doing it not very well on a magnified basis right now. If you were doing it right before COVID, you're doing it really right now. So that's what we're seeing, is we're seeing those guys and gals that were, just threw their hat in the ring and started doing IT work and suddenly called themselves an MSP are starting to, they disappeared pretty fast. And now some of the weaker ones are starting to weed out a little bit.
So what does that look like? Does that look like, do you have any MSPs that are going out of business that are maybe reaching out to you for jobs or to pass their clients to you, or is this coming from the clients?
Coming from the clients, we are seeing, we've hired, we're hiring right now. We're hired 2 weeks ago, and we hired a month before that. We are seeing employees coming out of those MSPs that are applying.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So a similar situation to Alex taking advantage of that too. One thing I wanted to ask before it gets too late, we're right at 2 here. And Ray, maybe I'll keep you on for another second too. Um, one other thing that I've seen mentioned a lot since all this, and I want to get kind of like a truth check on it, is co-managed IT. So I'm going to launch one final poll, and thank you everybody for filling these out. This is something that everyone's kind of come out. You've seen a lot of articles about it. A lot of thought leaders have said, yeah, like this is a big opportunity for MSPs who want to go up market, is to look at mid-market companies who are looking to reduce staff now and become more efficient. So that introduces co-managed IT. And I'm curious if just with the folks on the call here, does anyone have experience with that? Is it something that it makes intuitive sense, but is it something that's actually people think is actually happening, or is it something that a few thought leaders have said it and now everyone's running with it?
I mean, we started doing co-manage from the first year we started doing MSP. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship if you do it right, and you get to bring the best to an organization that may not have those resources that you have. Co-manage IT, usually you're filling one of two roles: one where the internal IT staff is overworked and it's just the minutia stuff, right? The help desk, the printer password resets, the printer jams, they just can't keep up with that stuff and they need tier 1 support. You can come in, and because of your resources, your scaling ability, and your efficiencies as the MSP, you can take care of that. Or you get those that they're so ingrained in their core set of technologies, right? They only know their one firewall, they only know their one set of switches, that when they need something on a project level, they don't have that subject matter expertise. So as the MSP, you can be that, that extra level, so you can pitch to the organization. You don't have to spend as much money training your internal IT. You don't have to spend as much sending them out to conferences or, worry about them getting into waters they're not familiar with, because we have the resources to do that. We can keep your in-house IT doing what they do best, which is keeping your frontline happy. So co-managed is an awesome dynamic. And it does give you, and I'm sure Alex talked about this, it gives you diversity in your revenue streams, which is important for MSPs. That's what keeps you safe. You can't have everything in one sector. You have to have diverse client base. You have to have different channels of revenue, sticky revenue, right? Of course, I'm going to save WAVE, but whether it's ISP sales, whether it's, relationships with other vendor types, that recurring revenue, or you're in different verticals and different revenue types, that's what's going to keep you afloat. So any one hit to any one market is not going to take you down.
Ray, I was thinking about co-managed IT because I've seen these articles coming out, and the way I kind of framed it out in terms of when I started doing co-managed IT, those were larger deals. And by taking on larger deals like that, I didn't have to have the management of as many small clients. And we were only doing a portion of it. And I can look at that point, and that's where I really started to scale my business quickly. And I just send the message to everyone that if you can find a way to take on a co-managed deal, to hunt those down, it can really enable your business to get past certain points of growth very quickly.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, those co-managed deals tend to be bigger. They make life easier too, because they know what they want. Yeah. The catch with co-manage is you got to be very, very careful that the internal IT doesn't get stepped on, right? If you're doing it right, in my opinion, of course, but if you're doing it right, when you do a traditional MSP sale, you need those internal company champions for you, right? You need the gatekeeper in love with you. You need the people, the CFO in love with you. They have to understand their value, because when things get difficult, you need those internal champions speaking on your behalf when you can't be there. Co-manage IT, it's very easy for the internal IT people to say, these people are going to replace me. And I think that's the wrong dynamic. You need to come in and say, we're your best friend. We're the ones that are the second voice to the CFO saying, we absolutely do need that server upgrade. We absolutely do need this project to move to this new LOB or ERP to make, gain these efficiencies and make the staff better. Because sometimes the second voice saying the same thing is all that money really needs to hear. And if you can make them your best friend, you'll have a customer for life. And it's so much easier to get in, because now you don't have to show your value proposition to that IT, as difficult as that is with a regular person, right? Showing your value and then setting your proposals. Explaining that to the layperson is always the hardest part of any sales process. When you have internal IT, then you can go ahead and you're speaking geek to geek, for lack of a better term. So you understand each other better, and that should be a better relationship overall, which is the goal for any client relationship.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would just point out that co-managed IT takes a lot of different flavors. My preferred one was where we took over the whole IT function, or we just reported to the CTO or CIO, and we were the entire IT staff below that. And that's kind of ideal, because when you're trying to balance between their IT staff and yours, that's where I think it gets tricky. But I think this brings up, Jonathan and Ray, like probably the possibility of a later conversation about this topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I appreciate you guys chiming in there and confirming that this is a real opportunity that people should learn about if they're not doing it already. So absolutely. I mean, future topic for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've struggled with that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because obviously you can see that there's going to be some problematic barriers in some cases too. So that would be another thing important to hear from. What are the challenges there? What are the hurdles?
Like for us, if a CEO or a CFO are bringing us in, then there's a natural resistance of the IT staff that we're there to replace them. And if they're not on board, I've just come to the conclusion that we don't take them if the IT person isn't on board, or the CEO or CFO has given us what their plan is ahead of time. We've had the opposite problem where we do have a champion in the IT person internal, and then they have a problem, and then we lose connection with the CEO or CFO. And then when there is a problem and that person disappears, that our relationship crashes because we don't have any connection to the management any longer, and we were part of their team, right?
I think that brings up a good point, and I know we're short on time, so I'll be as short as I can. But that has been the single biggest gotcha when it comes to co-manage that I've seen, right? And we've done this a couple hundred times with clients. If you only work with one, if you only work with a technical, or you only work with CFO, you are going to become the enemy of the other. You have to have relationships with both, and you absolutely should, because if you're doing it right, if you're doing account management right, if you're building that relationship and keeping it, you should be very adept at speaking plainly to the audience that's involved, right? If you're talking to the CFO, if you're talking to the CEO or any of the other C-suite, you should be able to talk in layman's business terms. If you're talking to the CTO, the CIO, and many times the CTO is more business than technical, but the CTO, the CIO, or any of the internal tech staff, you should be talking technical, right? Because you need to speak to whatever their interests lie, and that, if you do one or the other, you can't accomplish both just by speaking to one half of the team. There is no IT without the money. There is no money without the IT. You got to have both.
So if we don't get that relationship now or have that up front, we don't even take them on. That's a disaster for us.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, but it definitely can be done. It's just another skill set, like everything else you have to learn, right?
Well, thank you guys so much for that. And obviously, I mean, I think we have some interest in diving deeper into that topic. Since we are going over time here, I just wanted to call out Ray. We just talked about, of course, there's lots of other places that you can go to connect with MSPs. There's Facebook groups. Oh, look at that. There's something that's happening next week, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come on to hijack the
I know
the
you
talk,
didn't. I know. I'm
take,
just, yeah.
But Rachel went ahead and said it anyway in the chat. I saw it. But yeah, we have next week, and actually I'll do my my fun stuff. We do have next week our Cloud Connections conference.
He says.
We have our Cloud Connection Summit coming next week. We are going to have tracks for management, for technical, and for sales and marketing, including how to reach out to new clients that are because nowadays you can't door knock, you can't walk in the door. It's not as easy. So we have sessions specifically for that. Ninja RMM is a sponsor, of course, because they're so big in the community and they love these conversations. Ninja RMM is absolutely going to be sponsoring the event and be there. Alex from Lifecycle Insights is going to be there as well, as is Kelvin, who I see in the chat. He's going to be hosting a session on APIs start to finish. If you haven't seen his Cyber Drain blog, I mean, my techs live and die by it. It's assigned reading and coursework for them. So you couldn't find a better resource. But yeah, next week, July 28th through the 30th, we're going to have lots of fun, lots of good time. Free registrations for all MSPs. Everything's recorded. Register. We're going to send out real swag. So shirts, pens, maybe Drizzly's gift cards. I'm not promising anything. So register. We're going to have a good time.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, and really appreciate you coming on and sharing thoughts, and of course you get a chance to talk about that event next week. It's going to be a good one. Anybody else have something we want to plug? We got Kelvin. I added his website, which everyone really should read. I mean, we have a newsletter that goes out. Hopefully everyone on here is subscribed to it. MSP Bento. It's from Ninja RMM. It goes out every Monday, and I'm constantly picking things from Kelvin's blog to plug in there because, like Ray said, so much good stuff in terms of PowerShell monitoring, whipping up really good stuff on your own. So with that said, I mean, I know people are starting to sign off, and Ray, I'm going to let you go, and Ryan too. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks for having me on. Take care, guys.
You too. I wanted to give another shout out to our next live chat. So this is going to happen not next week, but the week after. We'll make sure that we email everybody here with a link back to get the access to this recording. The cool thing about Crowdcast is you can actually, as soon as we end the session, it'll start processing the recording and it'll be available within a couple of minutes. But we'll shoot an email out to confirm that. And we'll also give you a heads up about our next session, which is going to be cool. And I mean, the big challenge here being everyone looking for new clients, we're going to have the head of our EMEA office and operation, who is a former executive of sales. He worked for TeamViewer. His name's Andre Schindler. The thunder is very ominous, but he's going to be delivering a whole session on how to create the kind of like the anatomy of a great sales call or sales meeting. And so Tom and I have been working with him on that. Tom, of course, has all of his experience as an MSP owner. One of the MSP owners, a rare one who's really, really interested in the sales. And so we're going to be going over all that stuff. So make sure you tune in for that. Tom, anything else you want to say about that one?
Great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, you're right. That is probably my favorite part of an MSP was when I got to basically switch over and be pretty much full-time sales. And so I like talking about it more than anything else when it comes to MSPs. And also want to tell everyone, feel free to reach out to me directly. I also do some level of MSP consulting. Or if you just have a few questions, you can contact me at tw@mspgo.com or on LinkedIn. You can find me. And additionally, I also want to reach out and thank Sammy on the back end for Ninja. She's flipping all the switches. She makes these things pull off without a hitch, and it's a great job. You don't see her, but she's there making it happen. Thank you. Absolutely. And thanks, everybody, for joining in. I mean, this is really what keeps us doing these things is there's always great conversation. As long as they're helpful for you, we'll keep doing them. Like I mentioned, I think I will send out a survey just to get thoughts on what are some good topics, what are some ways we can improve these. But as long as they're helpful and we have good conversations like this, we'll keep them going. So thanks, everybody. I hope everyone stays safe, has a good weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.